Hey now, you're a rock star. Welcome back to Wine with HR. If you've listened to us in the past, then you've probably heard us talk about rock stars and superstars. If you haven't, don't worry, we'll explain it in just a minute. But in today's episode, we are discussing how both superstars and rock stars can show their value to leadership or ownership in a way that can help you advocate for a raise, a bonus, or just some more benefits. But first, it's wine time. Trisha, what are you drinking?
Hi. I'm actually drinking something called Silk and Spice.
Oh my goodness, I had that once. I knew you would love it. I think when I bought it, I was thinking of you.
You must have been. Well, and here's the funny thing. Will actually picked this out for me today. I was in a car with four cats and a dog, and he only had two dogs. So it was much easier for him to get out of the car. So sent him into the wine store and said, pick me something fantastic. And so he did. I really, really like it. It says the metaphor of silk and spice applies to the flavors of this red blend. Smooth and juicy with a slight vanilla note, it possesses flavors that can only be found in the indigenous grapes of Portugal. And
Ooh,
I do like my wines from Portugal. So I'm very, very excited about that today. I don't know what's happening. I went from
yeah,
like Italian to Canadian to clearly my palate is just all
yeah.
over the place and I'm very excited. So we're just going to leave it at that. Can we just move on to you?
Yep, yeah. I even heard a little bit of pirate at the end there.
There darn well could have been. I mean, I feel like a pirate with all the traveling I've been doing.
Yeah. And I feel like a pirate would like a wine called Silk and Spice. So, you know.
Also, a very good point. And it's
Mhm.
delicious, by the way. I should probably say that. Like, I can definitely taste the vanilla, which makes me very happy, and some of like the darker berries, as you know, I love. So, what are you
Very
drinking?
cool. I am drinking an oldie but goodie, but I don't think I've ever reviewed it on the show before. But because it's like 80 degrees and random weather-wise, I'm back to white because it still feels like summer. And so I'm drinking a Sauvignon Blanc, but it's Kim Crawford and it's the Illuminate, which is only 70 calories per serving, which means you could have more,
Which means
without
you can
feeling
have
so
more.
guilty. So I
Oh my
really
God.
do like it. It's a little bit lower alcohol content for a wine, so it's 7%. It's a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And it just strikes a nice balance. It's kind of in the middle of Sauvignon Blancs. It's not like super bitey, but it still has that crispness and the citrus flavor that we both love from a Sauvignon Blanc. So, but it's one of my favorites when, I want to drink wine, but maybe don't want all the calories that come with each glass. So, so I like it.
Love it.
Yes, quick programming note to all of you. We are going to go to audio only podcasts. We weren't having a ton of people watching the videos, and it can be a lot more effort to edit those for our dear Brenna. So we're going to go back to audio, which seems to be the preferred method that people like, but we are open to going back in the future. And we are going to be featuring a new little spin-off called Wine After Dark. Boom, chicka, boom,
So
boom.
fancy.
Which will be short little episodes, probably about 15, 20 minutes with wine experts on the wines they like and drinking wine. So it'll be all about the WINE. So we're hoping to roll that out uh, before year's end. No promises. We're working on it though. So anyway, back to our episode. So Trish, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about today and why?
So, as Jules mentioned, in this episode, we're actually going to dive into a topic that, or I should say, another topic that is near and dear to our hearts as HR professionals, how to effectively showcase your value to your employer, especially when you're looking for better compensation or benefits. And we all know in this market right now, this is a really, really difficult time and you are still going to need more money as your company is tightening their belt. So you want to make sure that you really do listen up and take some good notes on this one. Jules, though, you mentioned something that we've talked about before, those superstars and rock stars. For our listeners who are unfamiliar with that concept, can you tell them what you're talking about?
Of course, I'd be happy to. So, Superstars and Rockstars comes from a book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor. And we reference this book a lot because it's a great one. And for leaders out there or, HR professionals, managers, it's a great book to look at if you're looking to, maybe change the dynamic on your team or get to know your team better. But in the book, Kim talks about superstars and rock stars. And the superstars are those people who typically want to climb the corporate ladder. They want to advance in their positions. And you need those people. But you also need rock stars. So your rock stars are those steady workers who are really, really good at their job, but for a multitude of reasons may not want to move up the corporate ladder now or even in the future. And so this episode is for both types of people because, as Trisha mentioned, particularly in this economy, everybody needs more money, but you need to be able to demonstrate why you deserve more money. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about specific strategies for HR professionals because it is a little bit different, as well as specific strategies for managers, but a lot of these have a lot of overlap as well. So, as Trisha said, this is a great one to have a notebook to jot down some of the things we're talking about because these are going to be very valuable tidbits for you.
You are so funny. In all seriousness, though, it's not enough to do like just good work, right? You really want to make sure that you know how to articulate and demonstrate the impact of the work that you do. You know, there's a reason I love my stats. It's because it actually allows us to be able to show our value as HR or as managers or as any employee. So it really is crucial for everyone. We want to make sure that, well, as HR, we're always advocating for others, but we forget to advocate for ourselves. Or as managers, you may not know how to advocate for others as much as you would like to. So, this is going to be a really good episode for that as well.
I agree. It is often the hardest to advocate for ourselves. We're very good at doing it for other people, not so great at doing it for ourselves. And as we've mentioned a few times on other episodes, it can be really hard for HR professionals because so much of what we do is intangible. And so it's not the same or as easy in theory as a salesperson who can go in and say, I earned the company this much money this year, or I made X number of sales, which is more easily quantifiable than typically the work that HR does. But one of the biggest ways that HR can show value is by demonstrating how their initiatives directly support business objectives. So, in order to do that, you have to know what the overall goals of the organization are. So, that's number one. But number two, and I'm going to steal Trisha's stat sunshine for a second.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, but one of the ways
All
you can do
right.
one of the ways you can do that is by being an idea person. So this comes from an article by the University of Washington Professional and Continuing Education Program. And one of the things they point out is that more than 70% of companies surveyed in the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs survey say that creative thinking is one of the most sought after skills in today's workplace and that it is only becoming more important. So, being an idea person is one of the ways that, as both an HR professional and as a manager, you can show your value. So, what does that look like? That could be, first of all, you got to look around and see what the problems are and then come up with ideas to solve them. So, in HR, are you reducing turnover in key departments? There's a dollar amount attached to that, which you've probably heard us say before. Are you improving employee engagement scores? There's a dollar amount attached to that as well, but there's also probably really great stories, which we'll talk about in a little bit. As a manager, have you promoted several people on your team or helped them get promotions? That shows value. There's a lot of different ways, and we're going to talk about some of those different ways. But first, we want you to start thinking about becoming that idea person and looking for the things that can show how valuable you are. And one other thing they said in that article about being an idea person was that if you start by identifying a problem that either your immediate team is facing or the organization is facing, and then you brainstorm ideas, you come up with something, even if your idea doesn't work out, the fact that you went through that process and you shared your idea and your solution with people shows that you have initiative. It shows that you are creative and it shows a willingness to lead, which are also all very valuable and tangible things in their own right.
Talk about a measurable impact. I mean,
Right?
come on. I want to specifically go to the one that you mentioned about reduced turnover. This one for me, I think is huge because if you think about it, our HR folks out there, we are always looking at new strategies to reduce turnover. Or so if you, let's say, all right, I know, I got it, I got it. You ready for this one, Jules?
I'm ready.
All right. You implement a new retention strategy. Doesn't this sound so fancy? And the whole point of that is to lower attrition. Now, even if you do this by only a few percentage points, that's a huge win because if you look at those percentage points and then you transfer that to dollars saved, this is something you need to shout from the mountaintops. You want to always think about, okay, let's look at recruitment overall and then think about that as how can we save money? Because again, anytime we can save money, we are the superstar, we are the rock star, we are the all star, right? You like how I
Nice.
tied that back in? Woo woo! So we also, though, not just in recruitment costs saved, but part of that also becomes in what we can avoid, which would be like productivity loss. And one of my personal favorites, as you know, knowledge retention. So I'm all excited about this topic.
Yeah, and it's also not just about cost savings, but also the positive impact that you are having on your team or the company as a whole. So, again, from an HR perspective, maybe you can show that you are increasing overall employee morale or employee engagement or retention. And we've talked a lot about retention in this particular season. So, just coming back to that, listen to some of our earlier episodes if you missed them. But You can do employee engagement surveys periodically throughout the year to gauge how engaged or disengaged employees really are. And then you can use that data to, again, demonstrate that your programs are working or to advocate for a program. Again, being that idea person, if you do an employee engagement survey and it turns out that uh-oh, things aren't quite where we want them to be, you know, then propose some ideas as to how you can fix that. And then if you get the chance to implement it, make sure you figure out a way to track how things have changed once you have made those implementations so that, again, you can show your work and you can show your value. So don't just think about what costs you can save, but also think about how those cost savings, or even if you do have to spend a little bit of money, how you're getting way more back in return in terms of things like employee engagement, employee retention, employee morale, because that's always really important too.
I love it. You know what it sounds to me, Jules? That you're kind of telling them to follow number three from that University of Washington article when they talk about being a proactive problem solver. Look
Yeah,
around
yes.
and find things, right? So I have to pull a stat because I'm really jealous you've done one already and I haven't. More than 60% of employers look for problem solving skills when evaluating candidates. As you probably know, or if you don't know, you should know, that doesn't stop once you land the job. So it's having always, again, you guys have heard me say to you countless times, don't come at me with problems, come at me with solutions. So if you have that solutions oriented mindset, then you're automatically going to be a proactive problem solver. Now, Julie mentioned potentially developing a new training program. So, one of the other things that I want to go from that is to think about okay, you identified a problem. Now, is it effective? Can you track its effectiveness? Of course you can. Ask, try to look to see are your employees actually performing better? Are they more skilled in those critical areas, the critical areas for your company? They may be different for every company, so we're not going to get into those. And then I get to say it, don't I? Show me the data. You knew I had to.
Yeah. For a
Instead of
minute
show
there,
me
though,
the
I thought,
money.
yeah, exactly. That's what I thought you were going to say, which also applies to this particular episode. So it would have
It
worked as well.
total darn it. Now I wish I would have. But truly, show the data. We love data. You know, I love my stats, but more important than me loving my stats and my data, it's your C suite. It's those who make the decisions. It's leadership, whatever you want to call them, especially when you can link it to or it impacts the bottom line. We say this, Julie said it, I've said it. As HR professionals, we need to learn to speak that language as leadership. We have to claim our seat at the table, as we've talked about in a previous episode. And
Hmm.
one of the ways to do that is by speaking the lingo.
Agreed. Yes. And so we have one other article that we're going to link in the show notes. It's from Insperity. And as Trisha just said, building that business vocabulary is one of the things they talk about, which in the case of business executives usually means talking in dollars, threats to profitability, logistics, and other business metrics. So just to build off of what Trisha was saying with being proactive, there's also a great line in this Insperity article that says, if you're waiting for the phone to ring, then you're not adding value. And I think a lot of times in HR, we can get into the habit of just sitting and waiting for the next thing that's going to happen, which usually we don't have to wait too long. So this is a little bit different than that, though. This is about actually being proactive. And we have talked before about finding that time to be strategic, carving out some time where you are blocking out interruptions and thinking about ways that you can help improve the workplace in some of the ways that we're talking about. So the other thing I just wanted to touch on about being proactive, which this definitely applies to both HR professionals and managers, but anticipate what your boss needs. So whether that's a manager, a supervisor, whatever the title they have, but anticipate what they need. And that again is from that University of Washington article. But this, I think, is one of the easiest ways to show your value. So I learned very early on when I was at the law firm that my job was to make whatever partner I was working for on a case to make their life easier. And then as I moved up the chain and became a partner myself, I valued the associates the most who made my life easier. Now, if they made my life harder, forget it. You know, they were not going to get a good evaluation, that's for sure. So think about that. Like, what can I do to make my boss's job easier? And so, like, one of the things that I often do, and I do this as a consultant, so it's not like I really need to do this, but I feel like this is one of the ways that I can show value. If I know that somebody in a leadership position at one of my clients needs to send an email to their workforce and it needs to have a particular message, I will draft it for them, because then all they need to do is copy and paste it, tweak it a little bit to fit, how they speak, and then it's out the door versus them having to sit there and take a half an hour to figure out how to craft the perfect message. If I can get them halfway there, I have showed my value. So think about, what are the things that take up your boss's time that you could do, or that you could help with or make easier. And that is one way. It may not be like super quantifiable, but your boss is going to know. Oh yeah, I can't be without this person. They make my life so much easier. And that is an intangible that does have a very significant value, that will give you a lot of job security.
So, managers, how are you going to show more value than just your own? Well, highlight your team's achievements, of course. If you've set goals for your team, did they meet individual goals? Did your team meet its overall goal? Did it exceed that target? What about the challenging project that you had? How did they do on that? Did they maybe come in under budget? Did they come in maybe ahead of schedule? Or was there something that, I don't know, maybe there was a difficulty that they faced where they and you were able to resolve it with the client to maybe now the client's going to use you for five other projects, or maybe you ended up saving them money and you money. So anything like that is where you want to definitely highlight, and really focus on those team members that maybe came up with solutions that were a little outside the box. Did those people save the company money or time? Again, here's the thing, by highlighting your team, you're actually not just showing their value, but you're showing your own value as well, because you are showing what a great leader you are. The fact that you have given the person this autonomy, this authority, whatever it is, to really go out and do what they needed to do speaks volumes about you and the type of leader that you are.
I think that is so important, Trish, because again, as we've talked about a lot of times, and Lord knows we say it all the time, but Managers are often promoted because they're good at their job, not necessarily because they've proven they can be a good manager. But a valuable manager is so key to an organization that if you can prove that you can take a team and you can develop them and those people can then become leaders. That is a skill that not a lot of people have, quite frankly. So that is definitely something you want to showcase and to toot your own horn about for sure. So keep track of those successes. Again, we're throwing out a lot of ideas here, but the big thing is you've got to document them so that when you go into those meetings, when you're talking to leadership about your compensation or what your bonus should be, or heck, even if you want more flexibility and you want a more flexible schedule, you can go in with these arguments to say, hey, look what I've managed to do. So I'm asking for a little bit more flexibility because I have been able to achieve all of these things. I've proven that I'm a good manager. I've proven that I am creative and innovative and valuable to this organization, and this is what I'm asking for in return. So that's the larger thing that we're talking about in this episode, besides just the ways you can show your value, is how to have that conversation when it comes about. So we will talk more about that in a minute. But as Trisha was saying, as a manager, the the other thing is, again, it's not just about output, but it's also about developing those team members, mentoring them, providing growth opportunities, improving their skills, and then again, making sure that you know how to highlight the successes that your team members have had, because that gives you, um, again, more things to talk about as to why you're so valuable to the organization. And then I want to just add something, and I think this is a really interesting thing for both HR professionals and managers to think about. This is in the Insperity article, but embedding yourself in other departments. So we're not talking about sticking your nose in another department's business and interfering. What we're talking about is collaborating. So if you can figure out, things like, let's say you are the manager of one department and you work closely with another, but you see that there are some areas where communication is failing, and you can come up with a solution to fix that, that also saves the company time or money. Bingo, you've got another thing to showcase. HR professionals, same things. Like if you embed yourself in other departments, particularly, those that still have a tie to employee relations. So, for example, you're probably going to be one of the first to know when several employees are retiring. So, if you've got like 4 or 5 employees who are retiring at the same time, that's probably going to present a big challenge for the company. So if you can be proactive, as we've talked about, and you can say to leadership or to, whichever department would be impacted by that, hey, you're going to have 3 people retire from your department over the next year and a half. We should probably make a plan. Then they're going to be very grateful that you have brought that up and that you have a solution in mind. So that is another thing to think about, not just within your own teams, but outside of your teams, those other teams that you interact with frequently. Can you do things to help them foresee problems down the road, or also just to better facilitate communications across company departments? Those are all ways that you can show your value as well.
I think, Julie, this is a good time to throw in number 5 from the Washington article, because I think what you're telling people to do is tell the story of their success, right? It's not just about doing it, but about actually keeping track. Y'all, this does not take much time. It's a couple of minutes every day, and you will be surprised at how quickly this story becomes a novel. And then you get to pick and choose all of your highlights or your highlight reels, so to speak. So, what they say in this article is the first thing that you want to think about is a description of that problem or the challenge that you faced. And then, how you address the problem. Because think of we want to be able to tie all of this in, the hows and the whys and the whats. And then an explanation of the results. What leadership traits and innovative strategies, I love that part. Leadership traits and innovative strategies you employed. And this isn't just for leaders, as they say in the article. Really and truly, this is for everyone. This is for managers. This is for HR. This is for any employee out there. Just really thinking about, okay, it's great that I can say what I did, but really telling them the impact of it, as we've already stated, and what kind of traits that you had to use. Because I think it's so important. The thing that a lot of people forget is that part that I just got so excited about, those leadership traits. That stuff is, if it's natural to you, if it just kind of pops out, that is, we couldn't even put a dollar amount on that. So I just want you guys to think about that a lot. The other thing I think Julie kind of mentioned earlier, and I did too, we talked about turnover. Remember that if you are a good manager, if you are telling the story of not just your own success, but the success of your employees, you're going to have lower turnover. So even if you're at a company where there is high turnover, you can say, hey, as a matter of fact, I have one of the lowest turnover rates in the company. And you can talk about why. You can talk about engagement. If you have not listened to any of Julie and I's podcasts on engagement, go back and look at those. Disengagement is, oh my gosh, it's such a, what, first of all, it costs, was it billions or trillions, Jules? Do you remember? I feel like it's
Uh,
trillions.
it could be. It could be. Overall, yeah, it definitely could be.
It's just a lot. Let's
Yeah,
just say
it's a
that.
lot.
It's a
It's a
lot.
lot of moolah.
So really focus on that and how it talks about your leadership and your leadership style and what you are doing differently in your department. Give me those metrics, let me see it, and tell them exactly what you are doing differently. And who knows? Maybe if you're really excited about this, you could even come up with a program to help others follow in your footsteps.
I love that because it sort of combines all the steps we've been talking about.
Uh-huh.
I love it. I love it when things come full circle. So, as Trish was saying, you basically want to prepare a portfolio of all your successes. So, I think the tip she gave, which is at the end of the day or once a week, whatever makes sense to you, but take a few minutes while you can still remember things fresh and write them down in a notebook. Call it your success notebook. Call it your show me the money notebook. Call it, whatever you want to call it, your Rockstar notebook, whatever it is. But if you do it throughout the year versus trying to do it just right before you have a conversation, you're going to have way more data and way more metrics to work with than if you try to remember in December everything you did throughout the year. So
And there's
that's
an
really,
app for
oh,
that.
of course
There's an
there
app for
is.
that. Like
What
there
is it?
you have the notes. Well, you have the
Yep.
notes
Oh,
app.
hmm.
You have what is the other good notes? There's good
Yep.
notes, there's regular notes, there's so many apps. So like you could even like be on the bus or on the train or on your commute or whatever and just talking about your day and what you did. Okay, sorry,
Yep.
had to throw that in
Nope.
there.
No, that's a great tip because it makes it easy, right? Especially for people who
Yeah.
don't like to type. They can
And
just
then you
speak
can
it.
use AI to summarize everything for you.
Right. This is one of those tools where AI is great. So
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. But so after you've prepared all of that, so again, now we're getting to the how do you have this conversation? So after you've prepared all of that information, the next thing you need to do is understand the market. So you need to do research on what people in similar roles in similar companies in the same industry are making in your area and then try to figure out where you fall within those ranges and where you want to be and how do you justify that, because one of the things that they may very well ask is, okay, well, what are other people in this industry making? Or they may not ask that, but that's very valuable data, because if you are already being paid kind of below market, that's another argument as to why you should get a raise, to first of all make it to market, but also because you've demonstrated all these valuable skills that we've been talking about, that you really should be above market. But you need to have that information. So in addition to it just being important information, it makes you seem reasonable, which you are, but it shows that you've done your research. You're not asking for anything crazy or just a number that you made up in your head. But again, it's based on quantifiable data. And you got that data from people, again, in a similar role, in a similar industry, in a similar geographic area.
All right, y'all. Let's talk about time. Because we're giving you some really great tips, but if your timing is off, this is not going to be your time to get the raise that you were looking for or the recognition. So think about what is the best time of year to have these conversations in your company? Now, for most of you, it's typically going to be during performance reviews, or if there's some sort of an annual compensation cycle that you have to think about. Those are normally when you would have the conversation. But if you just had a whole banger of output, right? You just like rocked this thing out of the park. Maybe after that moment, it might be a good time to have the conversation. Think about what's going on in your company. Think about, really, is this the best time to offer or ask for that kind of an increased, whether you're looking for money, or you're looking for a work from home, or whether you're looking for more benefits, or whatever it is. Really think about your timing and say, okay, it's not that I don't deserve it, but if I waited a couple of weeks, would this be better timing? Because, the CFO and CEO and whatever, they're engaged in this merger right now. Really bad time to ask. Just as an FYI. But, other times of year when, when they expected, of course, would be the end of the year, as I already mentioned, and during those performance reviews. But I just want to remind you that if you're confident, you have the data, you have the successes behind you, then there's no problem. Go ahead and make now your time.
I love that. I also would suggest that people think about having the conversation before decisions are made about bonuses and
Mm.
raises. So a lot of times people wait until after they've been given their bonus or raise, and then they have the conversation. But again, be proactive. Why not present your case a few weeks before those decisions are made, so they can take everything you said into account, and then hopefully you don't have to go back and ask. The other thing I would say is have several different options, because in case you can't get, like, let's say the raise is your first preference, but you can't get that, have something else that they could give you, that they could, so they still have some way of showing that they took what you said and they see your value, but maybe the raise just isn't possible right now.
I
So if you
love
have,
that.
yeah, so if you have some other
Oh,
options, then, at least you, again, are reasonable, and you're giving them choices, but you're still giving them some way to say, yes, we agree. You're a very valuable member of this team, and we feel that you deserve something more. Um, Now, remember, it is a conversation, not a demand. So be prepared to discuss and negotiate. Again, that first conversation, you are presenting your case. Do not expect an answer right then and there. You're probably not going to get it. They're going to need time to talk about it, and there's probably several people who would have to sign off on it. So don't, like, you can even lead off with that. Hey, I want to talk to you about, my compensation or my benefits or whatever the case may be. And I want to share with you the successes that I've had this year. I don't expect you to have an answer by the end of this conversation, but I just want the time to present my case. Also, make sure you schedule the meeting and ask for however much time you think you need. Do not show up at somebody's office and try to have this kind of conversation. And make sure you're clear that, hey, I would like to talk to you about my compensation for next year or my benefits package for next year or whatever the case may be, so that they know what the meeting's about. And then your biggest job is to practice, practice, practice that conversation. So we have talked about this before in other contexts, but that is one of the best ways that you can prepare for it. Grab a colleague, your significant other, a good friend, your cat or dog, doesn't matter. Just find somebody to practice in front of. It does help if they can if they can talk, because then they can pose questions and you can run through like worst case scenarios, right? So like
Right.
um one of them could be if they say, it's just not in the budget this year. Okay, so how are you going to respond to that? That's why I say have several options. Have some that don't cost any money. I can I have an extra week of PTO, or can I have 2 work from home days, or can I have some options that don't cost money? But you want to kind of work through all of those so you're prepared in the moment and you don't get flustered and you don't lose like all the stamina you went in there with, like, because you're going in confident. You don't want to have like the air taken out of your sails or the wind taken out of your sails. You and I are mixing metaphors all over the place today, but it's
I
okay.
know.
um, Everybody gets our meaning. It's all good. But so practice, practice, practice that conversation so that when you go in, you really are showing that you are the rock star that you are and that you deserve everything you're asking for.
I love that. I love that. And I love that. Like, I'm just sitting here like, yes, do it, do it. I think one of the things that we always talk about at any age, practice, right? And I share this with a lot of my classes. I always say it's not practice makes perfect, it's practice makes progress. And I swam from the time I was 8 all the way up into college. And I still, to this day, and we're not going to talk about how many years ago I left college, or we left college, I should say, since we were at the same one. Um,
No, no,
no,
no,
no, we
no.
don't go there.
Mm-mm.
But I can still envision the races that I used to swim, and my muscles will fire and twitch. Like I can still see them because I practice so much. I use visualization so much. And so I know that it feels silly when you are doing this practice, but it really really does help. It's because that helps our bodies and our minds know what to do when we get into the actual situation. So ask your friends, like Julie said, to ask you the tough questions. Google what some potential question responses could be, and then practice your response to that. We talked about using AI. You could use AI, make a presentation, and then practice even the presentation. Believe it or not, I was doing this. I was, oh, what is this little feature? And I hit on PowerPoint and I was talking to PowerPoint and it told me, oh, that sounded really great. Oh, that one you had a few too many ums. And so it was just a really neat thing. So if you don't have anyone you could run it by, maybe you're embarrassed or maybe you're just not ready to talk to them yet, that might even be another option. We have to start utilizing some of the stuff that's out there for us. Ultimately, whether you are an HR professional and you are out there trying to reach your goals and how you're getting there is, I don't know, crafting a new employee experience. Or if you are a manager who is leading or learning to lead a high performing team, make sure that you're not just doing the work, because the work is important and we're so proud of you for doing it. But you need to showcase the value that you are bringing to the table. All of this work, you want someone to know the value. And honestly, you are the best person to toot your own horn.
Yeah, and Trisha, as you were talking about practice makes perfect, I was thinking in this particular case, practice makes confidence because it'll give
Mm,
you the confidence to go in and have that conversation and to advocate
yes,
for yourself, which again can be
I love
really
it.
hard. It's probably the hardest thing to do is advocate for ourselves. But
Truth.
remember that when you are advocating for yourself, you're also helping the organization recognize the true impact of its people, and you're helping the organization grasp onto those measures of success that you are showing them and duplicate them in other areas. So by advocating for yourself, you are also helping the organization. So maybe that will give you a little extra oomph to go advocate for yourself. So
Love
before
it.
we close out this episode, let's check in on the wine. So Trish, how is your silk and spice?
I can totally see why you thought of me when you drank this. I am 100% in love with it. Yeah.
I mean, the
And
name is great.
it is. It's so great. And then I even I have a drip on the bottle cover. I really love the wine label itself too. It's just so pretty. And it's only, by the way, like 69 degrees here. So when you're talking about 80, I'm like, what?
Yeah. You are farther north than I am, so it still feels
A
like
little bit.
summer here.
It's
Yeah,
about
still
to be a
feels.
lot further north.
I know, I know. Yes, yes, y'all. Trisha's moving up north, further up
She says
north,
with a weird
Michigan.
southern accent.
I know, I know. I don't. Yeah, you and I
Oh,
both. We don't have the accents. I
not
should say
today.
no.
No.
She's not gonna be a youper, but it's close.
Yeah, I can do that because that, being from an I'm still a troll. I'm an hour and a half south of the bridge. And we're gonna have a good time, eh?
Yep,
I'm very,
yep,
very excited. But
yes.
I forgot to show you my shirt, and unfortunately, we're not camera today, so our friends won't be able to see it. But look at my shirt.
So
So for those, okay.
Trisha's wearing a shirt that we got at Disrupt HR Cleveland, which Wine with HR sponsored last week. And it says, I'm calling HR. And it was from UKG. So a very, very
Shout
funny
out to our
shirt.
friends at UKG. Thank you so much
Yes.
for the t-shirts. We loved
Yeah.
them, and it was so much
Yes.
fun sponsoring along with you and everyone else that sponsored. It was a phenomenal event. For all of you out there, if you haven't gone to a Disrupt HR event, oh my goodness gracious, you need to do so. Julie and I loved it so much that...
We are
Julie, you want to say
going,
it?
yeah, we're going to the Disrupt HR in Pittsburgh, which is October
Woo!
29th. It's going to be a blast. So if you want to meet us out there, come and check out our booth. We're going to be sponsoring. So we'll have some fun giveaways and you can come meet us and we can have some wine together.
Sounds
Which,
amazing.
by the way, my wine still tastes lovely. So,
Oh,
again,
sorry,
Kim
I got
Crawford.
distracted.
I know you got distracted. It's okay. Kim Crawford, Illuminate, 70 calories per glass. Lovely. But so that's it. We're going to wrap this up. We thank you for joining us as always. We hope you got some value and that it turns into dollars for you at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So you're a rock star. Get your
Get
game on.
paid.
Get paid. Yes. So we love you. Continue to follow us, tell your friends, and please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Cheers.
Cheers.